to hear about and discuss with us on the uptake of AI for science, with a focus on AI for science institutes, the current efforts, lessons learned, and outlook on the future. This webinar is co-organized by SAPEA, the Science Advice for Policy by European Academies, and by the International Science Council Centre for Science Futures. My name is Doreen Uwais, Science Officer at the ISC Centre for Science Futures, and I will be moderating today's webinar. For those who are unfamiliar with SAPEA and the ISC, I'm going to do a brief introduction. SAPEA is a part of the European Commission's Scientific Advice Mechanism that is also known as SAM. And this mechanism provides high quality and useful evidence-based information and advice to support democratic debate, which is a key European value. So to support this process, European academies come together as SAPEA to produce evidence review reports so that SAM's advice can be based on the best available scientific evidence. As part of its activities, SAPEA aims to bring academies of Europe together for meaningful exchanges around the overarching topic of science advice. And this event focuses on AI institutions. We are bringing here in this discussion examples of successful partnerships, and we invite all participants to discuss your experiences, challenges, and what you consider best practices with our guest speakers today. The International Science Council is a non-governmental organization with a unique global membership that brings together more than 245 international scientific unions, associations, national and major scientific organizations, including academies and research councils, international federations and societies, also young academies and associations. The vision of the ISC is science as a global public good, and the Center for Science Futures is a think tank of the ISC that explores where changes in science and its organization are leading us in the future. So my colleagues will be posting in the chats the papers on which today's discussion is based. These papers were published in the last few months. Two come from SAM, a literature review by the SAPEA, and a scientific opinion, including recommendations by the group of chief scientific advisors of the European Commission. The third paper being from the Center for Science Futures of the ISC includes a literature review of policy documents on AI for science and 12 country case studies that highlight the national approaches to AI for science. So without further ado, I would proceed to introduce each of our panelists and invite them to take the floor in the same order that they were introduced. You're also welcome to ask questions in the chat while the panelists present so that you don't forget your question. My colleagues and I will pick them up later in the Q&A after the presentations. So in today's webinar, we have 4 distinguished speakers who will talk about AI for science. And here I'll clarify that the focus is on how we use and what AI we use for doing science and research, and not AI for policy making or research and science for AI. With us today from SAM is Professor Nicole Grobert, who is the chair for the group of chief scientific advisors of the European Commission and is professor of nanomaterials at the University of Oxford. Professor Andrea Emilio Rizzoli is co-chair of the SAPEA working group. He is professor at the University of Applied Sciences of Southern Switzerland and director of the Swiss AI Lab. Dr. Lorena Echeverry is associate professor with a focus area on data management at the Computational Institute of the Republic University of Uruguay. And finally, Dr. Mamita Kohli is an STI policy researcher and visiting scientist at the DST Centre for Policy Research at the Indian Institute of Science in Bangalore. So Nicole, I give you the floor. Please go ahead and feel free to share your slides and start your presentation.
Nicole, you need to unmute.
Okay, so sharing my slides and I'm unmuted. Thank you, Andrea. Thank you, Doreen, for this nice introduction. It's a real pleasure to be presenting today the work of the Scientific Advice Mechanism. I'm here together with my colleague, Professor Andrea Rizzoli. We'll be sharing this presentation where I'll be kicking off to just say a few words about the mechanism, Science Advice Mechanism, to start with, and then Andrea will continue on how we gathered the evidence, and I'll share later the output of this evidence in form of recommendations that we put together with the group of chief scientific advisors. So the successful and timely update of artificial intelligence in science in the EU who are we? Who is the scientific advice mechanism? The scientific advice mechanism consists of three parts. There's a group of chief scientific advisors, of which I'm the chair. And then there's this APEA consortium of academy networks, which provides the working group with given expertise, here presented by Professor Rizzoli. And the two of them are supported by the Science Advice Mechanism Secretariat. That's a group of people who sit within the Commission, and they provide support or an access point to the Commission. So while we provide independent evidence and we provide independent recommendations, we need that link to the Commission to understand what the Commission needs are. And you see here these different tiles presenting the SAM base, and then you see also where the SAPEA consortium draws on the scientific experts in the field, and in general, this European academies, and the linker of SAM to the Commission, to the College of Commissioners, the Director Generals, Joint Research Centre, is through the SAM Secretariat, and also in liaison with the group of chief scientific advisors. You'll see that on the next slide, where I'm just showing you the process of how we gather the information and how we kick off the work to produce a scientific opinion. So it's usually at the request of the Commission, where the group of chief scientific advisors liaises with the Commission to define the so-called scoping paper. The scoping paper is a very important document because it describes the scope of work. Once the scoping paper is defined, including the scoping question, the chief scientific advisors through the Commission, through the SAM Secretariat, reaches out to SAPEA, who then starts its own process of gathering the evidence, gathering the experts in a given field. So, for example, we have Andrea here as an AI expert, which I'm not. They do their reviews, and we then have regular meetings, so-called coordination group meetings, and we start to develop the scientific advice. We have expert hearings and also double check the recommendations with stakeholders at the stakeholder meeting before we finalize the scientific opinion, which is then handed over to the Commission, which basically makes proposals for policy or legislation. And ideally, we end up with better policy and legislation. Now, in the context of AI, the topic of AI, we all know it's super fast advancing. It's an essential technology for the scientific progress or process. And there's also a lot of competition out there from the European perspective. So China, the US, across the globe, there is quite a lot of activity going. And there's huge potential for the EU, but there are also some threads of lagging behind to other global players. And the idea behind this request and its motivation was really to establish a systemic policy to facilitate the faster uptake of AI in science, to make scientists like myself, who are not experts in AI, but in material science, make best use to accelerate, enhance their research, or to stay at the forefront of this type of research. So there is a need for a policy that can connect and complement the different AI initiatives that are happening here, there, and everywhere, and that can then impact the uptake of AI in science and for better targeted policies and its application. So the request came from Executive Vice President Vestager in July 2023. It was then discussed with the advisors. We created the scoping paper. Here you just see the faces of the group of chief scientific advisors, of which were 7. And the scoping paper or scoping question that we agreed on was, how can the European Commission accelerate a responsible uptake of AI in science, including providing access to high-quality AI respecting European values, in order to boost the EU's innovation and prosperity, strengthen the EU's position in science, and ultimately contribute to solving Europe's societal challenges? That was the question. This is when we then handed over to the SAPEA working group, and I'm handing now over to Andrea to explain to you how the group came together and worked. Andrea?
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Thank you, Nicole. The working group has been designated by SAPEA, selecting among members of the various academies of sciences of the European area, I would say, because Switzerland is not part of the European Union. But although that, I was invited to serve as co-chair together with Professor Anna Fabianska from Poland. And we were supported by 4 researchers, Arlindo Oliveira from Portugal and Paul Groth from the Netherlands, who steered the working groups focusing on AI in science and how science can be supported by AI, while Professor Martinkova from the Czech Republic steered the work of the experts were assessing the impact on the researchers of AI when it is used by scientists. And finally, Professor Young from the UK had a close look at the different policy options that emerged from the work of these different experts that participated. Overall, there were 35 experts who, and please next slide, that we had 35 experts in different areas of science with a diversity of countries across Europe and also beyond, also from the US and elsewhere. And we had 3 workshops, and each workshop had a report that you can access on the website. And we will put the link in the chat. Before these 3 workshops that focused on, as you can see on the left, the impact of AI in scientific process, the impact on researchers and their work, and the policy design of AI in science, there were, in parallel, there were literature reviews that were conducted in order to provide us with evidence on which we could work together with the experts. And we were also guided by a foresight workshop that sort of produced this scoping paper and helped the experts in assessing the various options that needed a detailed investigation and a detailed search in the literature. So we can move on to the next slide, where we have the structure of the evidence review report. We don't have time now to go into the details of this report, but again, it is freely downloadable. And the main core of this report was, first of all, on identifying the landscape of AI research and innovation, with specific attention to how AI is used in science. And this was also to put in the context of the global context of what is happening in the various regions of the world, in the various areas, and how Europe is positioned with respect to that. And then after this preliminary assessment, we had the 3 core parts that were on the opportunities and benefits of AI in science. And so based on the evidence collected through the literature reviews and the workshops to see how can the researchers and scientists benefit from the advancement of AI in the various fields. And then associated with this, there was a critical assessment of what are the challenges and risks posed by AI. And we can discuss about these maybe later in the open discussion part. There was then the impact on the scientists and the work environments, on the careers, the skills, the education, what type of measures are needed to bring scientists also from humanities to be able to use these type of new tools. And finally, all of this has been condensed into some evidence-based policy options that were then handed over to Nicole and a group of chief scientific advisors to make some recommendation. And I think that now the floor is back to you again, Nicole.
Yeah, thank you very much, Andrea. So indeed, we took the evidence review report with pleasure and looked at all the evidence that has been provided by experts in the field. And the group of chief scientific advisors assessed this expertise also in discussion with other experts and workshops. And we came up with 4 sets of main recommendations, and these are just listed here. Each recommendation has a series of sub-recommendations to give further examples on how this goal could be achieved. But the first and foremost recommendation was here to really for the Commission to develop and deploy frameworks, including flexible and dedicated funding mechanisms for research with AI that evolve with the fast-paced and dynamic advancements of AI. It's quite important because it's moving so fast that the Commission also needs to be active and flexible to support and strengthen the use of AI in research. Now, besides that, one also needs to improve the quality standards of AI systems, including data, computing, and codes, and of course to provide fair access to all researchers working on and working with AI research. By all researchers, we mean literally all, not just the physical and life sciences, but also the social sciences and the humanities, all subjects where big data is important and necessary. Now, to protect and invest into efficient concerted actions between existing research infrastructures, for example, Europe HPC as a computing power provider, and the future Institute for Research with AI, which we titled EDIRAS, as they will play a key role in ensuring the EU's competitiveness in all scientific disciplines. So setting up this distributed institute that is dedicated to fostering and developing AI for specific research questions and research areas. And underpinning all of this, the fourth recommendation is really to ensure that AI is driven by the people, individuals and communities living in an open society. It's to protect the researchers and the individuals and communities from being driven by AI to only generate profit or be controlled by entities while ignoring or opposing EU core values and principles. So the EU, everything under the umbrella of EU core values and principles. Now, these two documents that we've been describing here very, very briefly today, you can see them here. Also, there's a QR code where you could look up details. There's the scientific opinion on the left-hand side, which was underpinned by the evidence provided through the working group headed by Andrea Rizzoli and Anja Fabianska. And here you see the picture in the center where we handed over these documents to the Commission and Executive Vice President Vestager and the Commissioner for Research and Innovation. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole, and thank you, Andrea. This was a great overview of how the exam works and also how you brought about these super great reports on, something that we really need to understand better, know where to go and how to go. And as you pointed out very well, how fast, because of the fast changing nature of this technology, we do need to act quickly as well and understand, where to go with these collaborations and putting the researchers together and make sure that we have these priorities set properly. I'm going to now transition to our two next speakers, Lorena and Momita. So Lorena and Momita were the experts we worked with from the Center for Science Futures. Lorena, I will give you the floor now to give your presentation.
Thank you very much, Doreen. Thank you, all the presentations by Andrea and Nicole help very much to understand the process right now. Well, before I'm going to present myself a little more because I am a researcher in computer science mostly, in data management research area and specifically. And as Doreen mentioned, I prepared a Uruguayan case study that is included in the report. And for sure, I'm delighted to be here, and I want to share some of the main takeaways, I think, from the building of this report and also from the conversations during the Latin America meet that we had after the paper was presented. Uruguay is a small country in South America, but despite this fact, is quite well positioned in the regional scenario. According to an index that is prepared by the CENIA Research Center in Chile. I don't know if you are familiar with this index. It's called ILIA, the Latin American Artificial Intelligence Index, which in September there's going to be the launch of the second update on the index. This index is trying to measure the different aspects of adoption, use, research, education on artificial intelligence across Latin America. And our country is quite well positioned in that index. And with my colleague Guillermo Monsechi, we try to analyze why we think this is happening. And we believe that one of the main causes of this is that Uruguay, quite early, the date was in 2018, I think, published a development roadmap on data science and artificial intelligence, which was a huge effort of coordination between government, academic institutions, and also the private sector from my country. This roadmap included different activities and lines of work on teaching, on research, on the factors that could enhance the development of AI in our country at all levels. And I think that roadmap was a guideline for all of different institutions to take part in this puzzle and bringing efforts together to try to push the development of AI in our country. One of the things that this roadmap envisioned was a national center on AI, okay? Because other countries had similar experiences. For example, I don't know, CIFAR in Canada or these big centers in other countries. And this vision so far hasn't been developed with all the budget that I think that it should have, but it's a nice effort that we are pushing from the Universidad de la República, that is called cicada.ui. And cicada is data analysis and not only focused on AI, but also on data science applied to different aspects of research. For example, natural language processing and neurosciences, population dynamics, and also biomedical images and signal processing. And this idea of having a national center is I think it's also very important because it allows you to focus resources on one point and to have identified the local community that is doing research on these topics. Which brings me to the third point that I want to emphasize. It's the need to collaborate, okay? They need to have a strong regional and international collaboration networks. And in that sense, we are also contributing to the Latin America community with a conference, the Latin American conference in artificial intelligence that is called kipu.ai. The main goals of Kipu, or the mission of Kipu, is to try to support the advancement of local talent, of Latin American talent, research companies, all together, bring all these players together, and do in-person events, because we believe very much in having one-on-one contacts and one-on-one talks. And despite Latin America, distances in Latin America are sometimes are not so far, but sometimes are very far. It's not easy to bring together all the people to one place. Kipu, I think it's a big success so far. The first meeting was in 2018. Then we stopped because of the pandemics, and we had virtual events. Last year, we had our second meeting here in Montevideo. And next year, we have a KIPU conference in March in Santiago de Chile. And this event is also very important for us because it helps, as I said, to detect potential collaborations in the region, but also to bring here to South America researchers, top researchers from all the world, which are some of them are Latin American, but are living outside our countries, okay? I don't know how much time do I have, but I think that those 3 points, those are the points that I think that are our strengths. So what we are doing quite well from here. If I have more time, Doreen, I would like to mention also some weaknesses that we are, of course, identified, and we think that we are not very original with our weaknesses. I think that are problems that are found in other countries. One of the issues that we are facing worldwide is the lack of funding for these research activities, okay? Local funding specifically. Local funding in Uruguay is mostly government-based funding, public funding, and not investment from the private sectors. And despite there are lots of efforts to try to improve the involvement of the private sector into investment in, for example, biomedical or biotech companies, this effort so far hasn't, flourished. We are working on that, and as a community, and I think that one thing that was mentioned before is that we still need to build trust. Okay, sometimes this AI related research or applying AI to different problems needs time to produce results, and companies sometimes are not they don't have the time to wait for these results to happen. So this is one of the points that I think that we need to improve locally and possibly across Latin America. The second point is the restriction to or the restricted access to computational resources. Okay, in this specific topic of AI research or using AI, we are all aware that computational resources are key. Specific hardware is not cheap, and we think that we need to collaborate more on that topic, maybe to try to produce regional data centers or local to share resources in the region. And also related to that, we discussed a lot in Santiago in the meeting we had in April about the need to have shared data, okay? In our regions, some problems are very similar in Latin America. So, okay, and so we need to take advantage of that. Since the problems are similar, we should get together and share our research data in order to build stronger solutions and better solutions. And last but not least, we are facing a problem of talent attraction and also talent retention, okay? And that's something that maybe we can talk about later. Our research communities are quite pressed by the industry and the possibility of getting better salaries outside the academic environment. So this is also a I think that we have to take care of and work on providing solutions on that. So that's my contribution. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lorena. You raised many key points that I'm sure we're going to have a discussion on as much as possible. Through the context, I think to really try to understand how this AI Institute, where you try to keep a network of different people, different experts, but then also the resources, etc., and how the collaboration, international collaboration, would be included in this AI Institute. Mamita, I'll go on to you now.
Yeah, thanks, Dylan, and thanks to all the other panelists to set the stage. Yeah, I have shared my presentation because I have prepared a short presentation. As Dylan already has mentioned, that the focus of today's discussion was like how AI will affect the science. And that's exactly what was the kind of a research that we started doing, because again, I'm not an expert in AI, rather I'm a science policy expert, and our effort was to try to understand how the Indian science ecosystem should be prepared with this, the technology that AI has come, and then what kind of leverage that we can bring for our science ecosystem. But while we try to understand this, we realize, of course, we have to go back to the basic to see what kind of policies that the government is doing, let's say specifically in India, and how they're interconnected to our research question as per se. So again, I think it's very similar to what Lorena mentioned. We in India, when of course, the research on AI was happening in academic institutions. There were even specialized AI centers, but the government came into the picture. Maybe I don't know if we can say it late or early. So the first vision document that the government put out was in 2018 by the Apex Policy Think Tank of Government of India. It is called Niti Aayog, and it laid down the vision for AI in India, and it has something called the hashtag was the AI for all, because from the beginning there was always there was a push that an emerging technology is coming, and we should try to make that this technology brings an inclusive socioeconomic growth. And then it identified, in that document, vision document had identified five key sectors. It also interestingly tried to identify what are the barriers. And that's where in the barrier section, I think certain things that actually applies to the science and scientific ecosystem as well. Well, for example, the expertise, not just in AI research and as well as the science and the scientists, especially in the humanities and social science, how we can upskill them to adopt the technology that is coming up so that they can utilize it in their research. And another was to make an enabling data ecosystem, because that's SLAP, which Lorena again also mentioned, which also in Indian case was also very much true, that we don't have a very good enabling data ecosystem. And definitely there were various other needs was highlighted, specifically the needs for collaboration. Now, again, who is the nodal agency for India to implement it is this Ministry of Electronic and Information Technology, which started to implement a vision that was laid out in this 2018 document. And again, while implementation, a lot of emphasis on the indigenous technology development. And this indigenous technology development also has certain impact on the science system itself as well. And in this AI mission that the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology has laid out, is the computing capacity. So it was very clear that we need to upgrade our hardware capacity and, of course, upskilling as well. And they also started to launch data platforms because accessibility of data was very important. So kind of key focus was definitely on the upscaling and providing capacity and infrastructure. So that's how the kind of the government missions are working. And of course, there is quite of interest among general public as well, because that's why I put those kind of AI use cases here. Because of the government initiative, we have several use cases. Among this is the facial recognition and technology, because we all now can go to the airport and it's just a facial scanning and we can enter. So for each securities check and everything, we just go by these routes. So that's why there's quite a bit of interest, not just among the policymakers, the government, or just researchers, but the general public is also quite hyped about it. And of course, the Gen AI takes like ChatGPT also made quite an uproar in the country, like what would happen, and that's also had a lot of effect on the science system. But another example is local language translation facilities. So this is one area that the country, the research ecosystem is working on, because we have various languages in the country, and that's why from English to this local languages or between them, quite a bit of research is happening. And now I will come to a little bit more onto the institutionalization part of the whole, but the efforts that's coming up, because so far the research on AI, of course, was driven by academic sector mostly, not really. The private sector doesn't have much stake into it. The Indian private sector, academic sector was driven, and it was very exploratory. Now the research that government wants to be more focused, and they have established these centers of excellence. In the previous budget also, the funding allocation also has been given. However, there is a lot of push also to have more collaboration with the industry to get funding from industry. As Lorena also mentioned, definitely there's the same thing. In India, the most of the research is funded by government, so we need to have industry participation. However, how the vision of the Center of Excellence, what areas they will focus on, there are certain indication, but it's very early stage. So I cannot really tell much about it. But however, I would like to quickly take you through the Indian AI research landscape, because I think we see that quite a bit of research is going on. In last decade, it was picked up, and even in like 2022, even the Indian AI research became, like, in terms of number of publication, it became second. While in terms of patent also, there are quite a few patents. However, there is not really not much happened in terms of developing notable AI models, which we still have not been able to develop. In terms of collaboration, which we actually is one of the emphasis also is that not just industry or startup collaboration, it needs to be country collaboration as well, so that we can learn from others as well and have more knowledge exchange. So you can see that this is a collaboration. US, of course, is the major collaborator, and there are other countries that's collaborating. And also in the EU, also we have quite a bit of collaboration. In last 10 years publication, we have around 5% publications were coming within collaboration with various EU countries. You can see here. Now we'll come to this interesting question, and this will be my last slide as well, is that, I mean, first of all, that there is this vision that the AI should foster inclusive development, it should bring more social justice, that the technology should go to the last mile and help people out. But to do that, we need a lot of input from social science and humanities sectors as well. And that's one of the lacunas, that the research so far is happening is very much on the technology, how the technology adoption will happen in the country, uh, and what are the barriers in those adoption and how it will affect many people is what we don't know much about it. Now, a very important question that we are trying to understand for giving policy advice to government, or to make it more for scientists and scientific ecosystem as well, that uh, since many of this AI tools that's probably would be developed in other countries, maybe in US, it might also to use our scientists to use it, it might become very expensive. We have seen that before as well. So when we had to access certain tools, for example, in chemistry, people are using certain tools, and we always had it was getting very difficult. Few institutions which has a lot of resource could get access to it, but majority was not. So then now the question is twofold. One is that how we can build indigenous tools to help the scientist, and another way is that if there are tools developed outside, how we can bring into the country, and also in terms of many tool development, how it's also aligned with countries needs priority, and it should not just be the development should not be very much centered to the global north. How global south's need and context can be built into many of these tools, and how the science system can use those is one of the questions that's we are very much interested in, and we are trying to understand. For example, Nicola has mentioned the new material discovery. And so we want to understand how that kind of tools, how can we use it more, how it can become more accessible to us, or we have to develop it more indigenous tools. These are the questions that we are trying to explore right now. And also I would just end with that to highlight that there are certain regulatory framework, because with the discussion on AI, regulation is also coming up quite much in all the discussion. And so we have this Digital India Act. It is up for discussion. It came up in 2023. So that actually makes the point of how the data will be accessible, and how, also the security concerns as well. And also in the we know that artificial intelligence is going to be used in research. It will be a data-driven discoveries, but there needs some ethical guidelines, especially in the medical and biomedical field. So the Council of Medical Research already have a white paper on it, trying to set up some guidelines. But as I said, that all these discussions are a very early stage, and we need to probably in another 1 or 2 years time, we will understand all this a little more better. Okay, so with that, I thank you all and hope to have some interesting questions.
Thank you so much, Mamita. So many other, interesting points that we need to discuss, and I do want to prioritize the questions of the attendees. So please raise your hand if you have a question, and I can go to you directly to have you ask your question. We do have a question already in the chat. I'm going to try to make sure that it fits the context of the webinar, which is on AI institutions. So really trying to have a network of the expertise, the resources, etc. And maybe here I'll allow also Nicole and Andrea to comment a bit on what the recommendation highlights on this distributed CERN for AI institution. So the question is, what are the significant technical challenges faced in applying AI for research? And I think what we can maybe try to highlight through this kind of AI institution, how do you address or plan to address such challenges? Nicole and Andrea, can I give you first the floor to answer briefly on this question?
Maybe if Andrea goes first from the AI expertise, and then I can go second, or you can also do it the other way around. It's fine.
Well, I was hoping for Nicole to go first, but anyway.
Okay,
yes.
well, I can go
Maybe
first.
I know I can say a few words about. I mean, I think that the major technological hurdle that we are facing nowadays is the fact that the type of generative AI that is so much popular nowadays requires this very large computational infrastructure. But not only compute is needed, also data, lots of data. And data is probably the most valuable resource that we have. And we can access data, but then with data, some problems come up. And I would mention two, well, or maybe even more. One is privacy, the fact that data, when we ingest data in these systems, we must respect privacy. And then there is the copyright. And big tech companies seem to probably ignore this problem, some of them in good faith, because they say, but we are working for the benefit of humanity, which is a good point. If Google DeepMind says this because they develop AlphaFold, they managed to get partially solve the protein folding problem. So all of this is very good. But when you go into publicly funded research, you have to be very careful about these issues. And then there is also the issue of unbiasedness of the data, the quality of the data, all things that Nicole and the advisors have mentioned in their report, in their recommendations. And then when we come to compute, we definitely have large compute infrastructures, at least in the EU, but to get scientists from different disciplines to access this, to be able to use this effectively, well, this is another pair of shoes. So these are, I think, the major hurdles that we will be facing. And these are only a couple of them. There are many others that I see on the horizons, but maybe we can discuss about these later on. Now I would like to hear from Nicole, her perspective.
Okay, thank you, Andrea. Perhaps just the food for thought here. It's not just technical issues that need to be solved. It also needs to be solved that people, scientists like myself, who are not experts in AI, need to understand how to use the tools. And experts like Andrea, who develop the tools, need to understand what my needs are. And one common challenge working across disciplines, transdisciplinary, interdisciplinary, is to find a common language where we can understand each other, what we're talking about. I have tons of data, and I would like to put it into a machine that gives me the results or identifies trends or gives me an output that I can then take further to push my research further. But can I trust the output? Now, if Andrea says no problem, I can deal with these images and I send you the results, no problem. I need a week for that, whereas I would probably need 20 years if I did that manually or ever, if I could do it ever. He wouldn't be able to assess whether his data output was any good because his background is not material science. And I wouldn't know if the output is any good from a material science perspective, yes, but I don't know what the AI tools did to my data to understand whether it was in some form manipulated or whether indeed these results could be repeated if I gave him the same set of data again and he put it in a different machine or a different user. Or so I think there are a lot of opportunities, but we also have to be aware that everybody involved in this supply chain of AI for science needs to be trained and fully aware, not just regarding ethical guidelines, but really that the data that is being produced has any meaning, scientific meaning, and is actually real. So I don't think we can just separate technical challenges with all these challenges that Andrea just highlighted and I try to explain, but we have to look at it at it systemically. And with the evidence review report and the scientific opinion, we were hoping that we could cover all the systemic challenges. But of course, the field is developing fast and we're looking anxiously to see if we have overlooked something very obvious. So, it remains to be challenging but also exciting.
Thank you both so much. And yeah, I mean, we go back to the nature of the technology. How do we go about it in the different expertise to make sure that everyone is knowledgeable and and understanding how to go about it at the different life cycle of AI, right? Mamita and Lorena, I will let you also react if you want on challenges because you also highlighted it quite a lot in your presentations. And I think from this aspect, maybe you can also highlight how, at least at the national level and international level, collaboration has helped with understanding how to tackle challenges whenever it's being faced or it has been faced already.
Okay, I can go first if that's okay. So the thing, Dorian, is while the collaboration so far was happening, of course, on the research on AI, and it's now it's high time where we understand the need as well. So, for example, if something is getting developed in the global scale, then input from every region is taken into that development, then it will be more inclusive. And I think that is where the importance of collaboration will be very helpful. Now there is a lot of dialogue and discussion happening at country level. So of course, we can expect more inclusive development. But I think from countries like India or where the resources are resource crunch is hugely a problem and computing facility. So these kind of things should be taken care into a development, whatever tools are getting developed. So in that respect, I'm sure the collaboration is very important, that and like international level, institute level, cross country institutions, and more collaboration with the social science and humanities discipline while developing certain technology, certain application is extremely important.
I have little to add. I agree with all the opinions and the comments on the huge importance of data that Andrea mentioned, on the privacy and copyright issues that are raised in that sense. In particular, we have written a small letter. It was published in Nature Communication or Frontiers, or I don't remember the name, on the tension between this artificial intelligence applied to science, or science based on AI, and the open science movement. Why? Because we have this tension on open science trying to publish data, be reproducible, okay, and we are encouraging. We think that is a good idea, and we want people to make reproducible science, but also we have these companies and big enterprises using data to feed models to have different, sometimes commercial purposes. So there is a tension there between publishing data and how is this data being used for purposes that were in the radar, I don't know, 10 or 15 years ago, okay? I came also from the open data movement, and the open data community has always been concerned about what are the possible uses of that data. But these new technologies, and also this new, I think, commercial approach from many enterprises on the data that is collected from everywhere, introduces some new elements here, okay? So that is something that I will also like to mention, this tension on open science and AI.
Thank you. This is great. And I think I'm personally very encouraged when I hear more and more data talk, because I think we need more data talk, because we need to understand what we mean when we're talking about data for AI, for science, especially when we're looking at it from that angle, right? And I wanted to also ask, because many of you touched on private sector, because AI typically is private industry creations and being driven by the private sector. How do we, I mean, in experience of the countries, but also in Europe and EU, how has the private sector responded and being included in trying to understand and going forward with AI for science, if we can put it in that, keep it in that angle as much as possible? And how can we think of how to take it forward while also always including as much as possible the private sector to keep a good understanding of AI and the use of the technology? Yeah, whoever wants to go first. I won't pick names, but if you force me, I will.
That's another hard question. Yesterday I was in a meeting here with people from different backgrounds from our country, talking about the private sector and the involvement in this a more broad ICT or technology use in different scenarios. And I still that one of the challenges is that we, at least in our country, is that some portion of the private sector doesn't see the benefit of introducing more technology or improving their processes so far. So the challenge is maybe to convince them that they can improve. I don't know how. Maybe I don't know, the usual things that government do with this when governments are trying to enforce this kind of behavior is to introduce incentivos. I don't know how to say it in English.
Incentives. Good.
Yes, economic incentives, trying to reduce taxes or trying to improve the adoption via economical reward. But because at the end of the day, what the private sector wants is to make ends meet. Okay, so sometimes it's not easy to convince, because we are sometimes we are not certain that we are going to produce results timely also, and that is also another thing that we need to face. I don't know.
Thank you.
That's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Lauren. I'll let Andrea, Nicole, and Mamita also reply before we start wrapping up.
Okay, I think I would like to then give a very specific example, because again, as a scientist, this is what we face so much, and also I would say someone coming from non-English speaking countries, of course, our proficiency in that language is not very well. Now, when we had GenAI technologies like ChatGPT, everybody was pretty excited that now writing would be so easy for us, because while we try to write a paper, most of the time many of the people, like in the country, like in India, similar situation faces that, oh, the English is not up to that our standard of the journal, you have to pay so much so for that editorial service, which definitely it's huge amount for researchers in our countries. Now we have the tools where we can use this such kind of tools to improve our English, but now these journals will not let us. They are still not allowing use it. I mean, there are certain understanding that why, but still they have to be more inclusive, and it's probably not in alignment with their business models, but looking into the accessibility, they should be allowing such a tool. So it's again coming back to how we will make, when there is some technology which can be adopted into the systems, then we need certain guidelines, mechanisms, or some way so that we can adopt that technology into their systems. Maybe it's not in their in interest of their business, but it can be adopted. So there are opportunities, and that's what I would like to highlight here, that the opportunity should be taken. Yeah, now over to others.
Well, now that was quite an interesting aspect. That I mean, here we are derailing the discussion, but the fact that a non-English speaker author could use a generative AI tool to reformulate and to write a paper that would then be classified as AI generated, while actually the content is original, and what is not original maybe is the form. And I think that this is a problem with current tools, because they cannot distinguish, they cannot really understand whether the content is innovative, because they very often don't have the capability to do this type of deep inference on the meaning and the significance of the content of a paper. But this was just a side note with respect to the original question. Coming back to what Lorena said, I think that what is important for AI science is to be able to, in a certain sense, democratize access, so that making available open data, curated data sets, providing tools that are able to discover maybe new relationships that are then proven by domain-specific scientists, can make available a number of results that could be very attractive for companies to pick up, because this is the next stage. Here we're focusing on AI in science, how AI can further develop and make more efficient the discovery process. And then discoveries need to be made operational by companies. And for that, I think that there are many examples, especially here in Europe, of funding instruments that enable the transfer of the technology from academia to industry. What we are lacking in Europe is definitely the venture capital attitude that is present in the US, for instance, or in other countries. So that the companies get maybe an initial funding to develop an innovative idea, but then you need to bring it to the market. And to bring it to the market, you can't rely on public funding only. You need definitely capital and in large amounts, especially for the forefront technologies. So I think these are the few challenges that we'll be facing.
Yeah, thank you, Andrea. This was a good landscape and an idea of what we need to think about. Nicole, if you want to comment here, and then we're going to have to wrap up.
Just to be brief, to follow up what Andrea said, we had a specific recommendation for the Commission to consider in terms of, innovative public-private partnerships to incentivize industry to share relevant data for for projects for the public good with researchers, and have that to just foster that exchange. In terms of what Lorena was saying, an uptake of AI in industries that they don't trust yet, I think market will regulate it. I think those companies who will take up AI or entities, I'm not saying companies, entities that will take up, and they will progress faster. So I think it will be then a matter of competition. What is important though is the balance, striking the balance between research in the private sector versus research in the public sector, and what is currently happening with huge money available in the private sector, that the public sector is being more and more deprived. So we have to be careful that we don't end up with research only in the private sector, and this is really what the main issue is, that the public research arena stays alive and competitive.
Yeah, this is a great note to end on, and I think I totally agree that
Yeah.
we need to be aware of this. We need to be, yes, Andrea.
Sorry, Doreen, before you wrap up, there was a question about how will the CERN for AI be shaped in the coming years? And this is something that we didn't have time to discuss. The suggestion from the scientific advisors was to have a distributed approach. There are other people who say it's more centralized, but the very brief answer to this is we don't know. I mean, this is something that is an ongoing debate, and we will follow it closely. And so I don't know if Nicole wants to add anything, but I think that she doesn't know either.
Well, I do know that the Commission has been taking this seriously, and is taking it seriously, and is developing ideas that are probably going to be quite exciting. But I don't know details. But it's they're busy.
Okay, sorry for this interruption.
No, not at all. Thank you, Andrea, for picking it up and answering. And I think this is something that we'll all be, watching closely to understand how it happens, because this is something that many different countries will want to, and regions will want to understand for their perspective and learn from each other. We didn't have enough time to talk about the different regions. Well, Lorena and Mamita touched on it in terms of the different events and networks that are happening to kind of keep the regional expertise together. And this is something that, an AI institute would address and try to keep together, because this is exactly what we've been talking about: exchange of practices, exchange of knowledge, and making sure that there's inclusivity of different stakeholders, different people, citizen science, etc. I'm going to have to wrap up, so I want to thank the wonderful panelists for the presentations and for the very, very interesting discussion. I want to also thank the colleagues who organized the webinar, so Ala Ajbour, Marie Franquin, Stephanie Mazon, and Zenia Soy. Thank you all for the participants for being here today and engaging with us. And please do reach out to us if you have any further questions or you would like to know more about the organizations, the publications, and the next steps. Thank you again to everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.